A warm welcome, Jumbo Africa, to the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. Now, the focus today is on Indians and coloureds that could in future be blocked from state contracts of more than 50 million rand. This is the bid to reshape the BE policies to benefit black Africans, and is being spearheaded by the KwaZulu-Natal Economic Development MEC, Zihle Sigalala. And that's why we're asking this question.
Now, we want to find out from you, if you get involved in the conversation, the ANC is called, and this is the ANC in the KZN, and it's called for Indians and colours to be excluded from the BE deal. What do you make of this?
Nazim Grootboom says the ANC government must scrap all this nonsense of BE. Finish and Klaar. Well, that's a comment there already, so keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but we're also conducting a poll. Now, you remember yesterday, it was massive, it was huge. Thousands of people have participated in Black Monday yesterday, Kendall.
Absolutely, a protest put together to protest the killings of people on farms, and reports indicate that there have been over 340 attacks and at least 65 murders on farms in 2017 only.
Forum said that there were 71 murders, but the bigger question is, there's a lot more murders happening in this country, 20,000 in total.
That's true.
And the focus, why do we focus only on farm murders for that matter, are some? And that is why we're asking you this question, though.
Yeah. Have we become desensitized to murder in South Africa?
Well, there you have it. Hashtag crime stats, Black Monday, KZN, political killings, murder, Marikana, the Cape Flats. It's all there for you. 80 people in this country and on the continent have voted thus far. 75%, Kendall.
So yes, we have become desensitized to murder. Are you surprised, Elvis?
I'm not surprised at all. No. Well, Michael Big N.
He says no. He's not surprised either, and he says we haven't been desensitized. What's happening here in South Africa is nothing compared to the killings that happened in the US, in Mexico, in Syria, Myanmar, but you won't catch that on the media. That's Michael's take on the matter. Let's see what else is happening that we're talking about today, Elvis.
Well, sports, of course. Hey, it's the big day for South Africa. We're one step closer.
With that one step closer, as you all know, there's been a short list of 3, Ireland, France, and of course South Africa, to host the 2023 World Cup. And at midday, just after midday, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, World Rugby will let us know who their preferred candidate is. Do you think that it should be South Africa?
Well, that's the question we pose to you. Let's take a look at what you're telling us. Musa Jafta says, yes, I think we deserve it. Good playing facilities, hotels, etc. are all available to accommodate the visitors. And, of course, not talking about all the white elephants, some of the stadiums that we have in the country.
Absolutely. Mzwandile says a big no. Look back at 2010. Bafana were beaten early. South Africa is not good enough in sports.
Well, Mzwandile, looking back 1995, we won the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
Well, those are some of your comments, but we'll come back to some of them a little bit later. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. All eyes will be on Parliament when Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini appears before Scopa on the Sassa debacle this morning. The SABC promises that programming will not be disrupted as workers' union issue the notice to strike. And VET Student Representative Council to consult with students on hashtag fees must fall protest. Those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, good morning to you. Quite a lot happening in the world of sports. As we wind the year down, there's still quite a lot of fireworks in the making, and it seems like we've got new stuff happening at the Proteas.
New stuff at the Proteas? What happened?
Well, it seems like it's something I'm going to be telling our viewers about just now, but it's in the bowling department, and Otis Gibson, as you know, is a fast bowler himself, and I think he's going to be hands-on.
So, if there's changes in the staff, I would recommend Makai Antini to come back into the fold of the Proteas.
Couldn't agree with you more. One of the best bowlers ever, and he's not in the Proteas lineup and setup. Something to think about. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
I'm going to do the fast bowling myself. I can say that already because I've spoken to Charles and I've spoken to Cricket South Africa.
Phase 2 of new Proteas coach Otis Gibson's taking full control of the national side is in effect as he jettisons bowling coach Charles Lagerfeld to do the job himself. And Golden Arrows, the only team in the PSL not to have suffered a defeat this season, faces a superb SuperSport United as the ABSA Premiership resumes tonight. Antonio Conte takes a table-topping Chelsea back to his homeland to pick up where they left off with AS Roma after the two sides played to a thrilling 3-3 draw at Stamford Bridge in the last round. All this and more we've got for you for later on now, but Elvis does have the news, so be sure to stick around because he's going to keep you glued to your screen.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour, a joint meeting of Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, as well as the Portfolio Committee on Social Development will meet today with Sassa and the South African Post Office. Now, they will discuss Sassa's compliance with the Constitutional Court ruling on the phasing out of cash paymaster services, or CPS, and the procurement of alternative payment services. Yesterday, Minister Bathabile Dlamini told the media in East London that the Post Office could only provide one of the services that Sassa required to pay the grants. She announced that another procurement process would start to distribute social grants on November the 3rd. SAPO can only provide 2.4 million cards per annum, as opposed to the minimum requirement of 4.2 million cards per annum. The request for proposals required that SAPO disclose if any of the services would be subcontracted and to whom it will be subcontracted to. However, SAPO reportedly did not disclose this information even after being requested through correspondence sent to them.
To have a meeting with the post office, and they asked for the postponement so that they could respond to the award as well as to the conditions that we had put forward. Then the meeting was supposed to take place last week, and then yes, sure, it did take place. It was close to 5 minutes. Then they told us that the letter that was written by the CEO of the post office to the acting CEO of Sassa is enough.
The SABC says it will ensure that programming is not disrupted if a strike scheduled for Thursday goes ahead. The Communication Workers Union and BMAU Union have issued the SABC with a 48-hour strike notice. BMAU says more than 80% of its members at the SABC are in favor of the strike. Both unions say that non-unionized SABC workers would also be entitled to take part. The unions are demanding a 10% salary increase. SABC spokesperson Kaiser Kanyahu says management will do all it can to get all parties back to the negotiating table.
We are not going to negotiate in the newspapers. We are not going to negotiate on television. We have got to negotiate in a negotiating room. That is why the board felt that we need to formally have a negotiation where all the things will be put on the table and together agree on something. Therefore, if we are going to then work the way we are working, it is not going to be helpful to any of us.
The Economic Freedom Fighters' incoming Wit Student Representative Council says it will not shut down the university without having held a mass meeting with students first. The SRC President-elect Oreditse Masebe was speaking on the main campus in Johannesburg when altercation broke out between members of the incoming SRC. Student leaders across the country have threatened a national shutdown if the Fees Commission's report does not declare higher education free. President Jacob Zuma is expected to release the report later this week.
In what was supposed to be a media briefing, tensions quickly escalated, leading to a nasty fallout between incoming WITS SRC members. The EFF-led SRC eventually started the briefing, immediately stating their stance on the much-anticipated fees must fall report.
It's quite illogical to say someone must respond to something that has not been verified, right? So we want to give a proper response to the Fees Commission report.
Unrest has already flared up at some universities across the country as student leaders continue to threaten a national shutdown.
There are a lot of processes that go into the calling of a shutdown, right? There are a lot of processes that any student has to make within that decision making when it comes to a shutdown. Right now, we're in the middle of the exam season, right? In fact, a lot of students have already started with the exams. And we are saying it would be quite careless, selfish and reckless of us to announce a shutdown through emails. The only shutdown that we are going to announce is after we've consolidated with the masses of students.
Presidency announced that the fees report is expected to be released this week. An alleged leaked version of the report caused a major stir after it announced that free higher education for all is not feasible. Final examinations have already begun at some universities. Lapang Alamu, SABC News in Johannesburg.
We'll speak to the Education Transformation Network a little bit later on this subject. Meanwhile, most of the lectures at the University of Cape Town will remain suspended until further notice. Now, they were called off last week due to the ongoing student protest. University spokesperson Elijah Molola says that the Faculty of Health Sciences and the Graduate School of Business will continue to operate normally. Yesterday, the High Court in Cape Town granted the institution an interim interdict to prevent students from taking part in unlawful protest. Now, the former Gauteng Health MEC, Kwadani Mahlangu, has been summoned to testify at the Esidimeni arbitration hearings on the 6th of December. Department head Dr. Barney Selabano has been subpoenaed to take the stand 2 days earlier. A date for the former mental health director, Dr. Makhoba Manamela, has not yet been set, as she's still appealing the Ombudsman's findings. The CEO of one of the implicated NGOs took to the stand yesterday.
Anchor Life, housed at the Cullinan Rehabilitation Centre, one of the 5 NGOs that recorded the highest number of deaths. It was shut down in October 2016 after 5 patients died in just 3 months. Among them, Joseph Gumede. CEO Dorothy Franks conceded she was unskilled and unqualified to care for the patients.
You had no premises, right?
Yes, Justice.
When you received your license, you had no actual patients, did you?
No, Justice.
When your license permitted you to look after 150 people, there was no rational basis for that.
Yes, Justice.
Franks admitted to taking hundreds of thousands of rand in payments and Sassa grants 5 months after her facility was closed.
Why don't you do the right thing? Rather than just take the money month after month after month, long after your contract continued just drawing money. Why did you do that?
Franks also withdrew grants of patients who'd already died.
You continue drawing money of patients who had died. What is your answer?
Oh, yes, Justice.
She also pointed fingers at former Health MEC Kwadani Mahlangu and Mental Health Director Makhoba Manamela. Well, arbitrator Dikgang Moseneke says he wants to wrap up the hearings in December, and by then, Kwadani Mahlangu and other implicated officials should have accounted for their actions. The state says it will subpoena her by then.
We have taken a decision to ensure that a subpoena is issued against her for her appearance in these proceedings on the 6th of December.
The hearings will resume next week. There are calls for Gauteng Premier David Makura's appearance before the hearings to be expedited. This after new claims by the former Mental Health Review Chair that Makura knew about the transfers that led to the 141 deaths. Criselda Lewis, SABC News in Parktown, Johannesburg.
On the continent now, Kenya's President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta has thanked his supporters for electing him to a second term in office. Kenyatta won 98% of the 7.6 million votes cast in the 26 October repeat elections. Kenyatta says this victory validates the results of the August 8th poll when he beat the opposition leader Raila Odinga with 54% of the vote.
That today, I as a Kenyan celebrate our resilience as a nation, but I also celebrate our resilience and the resilience of our democracy, the resilience of our people, and also the resilience of our institutions. Any other country experiencing the turns and twists of our recent electoral process would have burst asunder. But our Kenyan resilience will not tire. It will not give in to obvious provocations and base invitation to the politics of darkness. But for this blessing of reason, long-suffering and passion for country, I take this opportunity to thank God. He has brought us thus far, and He will give us victory over darkness. On the 8th of August, and I will not tire to say so, Kenyans woke up early and peacefully to vote. And on that date, they voted me, their president, without a doubt. When my victory was put to test at the Supreme Court, this was the verdict. The court did not challenge my overwhelming mandate of 54%. The numbers were never questioned. What the court questioned was the process of declaring my victory. And because the court did not question my victory, they, by extension, with their ruling, validated my 54% numbers. And herein began a political paradox. In spite of this paradox, I had to make a very painful decision. For the choice for me was to resist the paradox and insist on my valid victory, or to submit myself to the rule of law. This was a very difficult and painful decision, but I had to make it. But in that, and in my own reflections, I was reminded that the law is greater than me. Indeed, it is greater than any individual. And that the law is a direct expression of the general will of all. And with this painful reasoning, I submitted myself to the general will as expressed through our Constitution. And this is how the October 26th election was made possible. It is an expression, fellow Kenyans, of the general will of all. And this general will included the right to vote, but also the right not to vote.
Well, we'll keep an eye on the Kenyan elections, the outcome thereof, and we'll keep you posted on what comes out of that. Now, our picture of the day. Well, in fact, before we go to the picture of the day, let's just ask you that question again. Let's remind you of our question today. We're focusing on BEE. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal has called for Indians and coloureds in that area to be excluded from BEE deals. We would like to know from you, what are your thoughts? This one coming from Michael Bigam that says, I'm sure there's a reason behind that, and that BEE was meant to uplift African people, black, Indians and coloureds, had a great life under apartheid. Well, there's another question to that there, Michael. Is it, of course, Save the Economy says it's time that that us as coloureds and Indians must form our own political party and stop voting for the arrogant ANC. Also says Save the Economy. Now, these are some of your comments. You can keep them coming and we'll read them. What will it do to the province of KZN? Polarization, I might add, is a name or a word that you can take from that discussion. But we'll come back to that interview and we'll talk to some of the stakeholders in the province about that. Now, our picture of the day comes from Real Stephen Taylor, and he says, I support the hashtag Black Monday and stand up against hashtag farmer tax and all murders. I don't support this. This is treason. I should be jailed. Now that is the flag that you see on top there, and of course people singing the old anthem and hoisting the old South African flag. And of course you can make of that what you like. The comment of the day comes from Aniki B. And it says, if you made it about all murders and you did not whip out the old flag, I would have gladly supported you. Hashtag Black Monday, hashtag no to racism. And that's really what it's all about. It's about all murders. It's not just about farm murders, and it's about all South Africans, isn't it? Now, in our courts today, the High Court in Port Elizabeth in the Eastern Cape will hear the closing arguments from the murder-accused Christopher Ponayoto's defense team. Ponayoto is accused of masterminding the abduction and the murder of his wife, Jade. She was shot and killed, and the body was found in a veld near Uitenhage the day after she went missing in April 2015. In the High Court, Judge Siraj Desai will rule on whether news cameras will be allowed in the courtroom during the testimony of the murder-accused Henry van Breda. Now, the 22-year-old van Breda is accused of murdering his parents and brother with an axe in Stellenbosch in 2015. His sister Marley was seriously wounded during the attack. Van Breda is objecting to the presence of cameras in court because he apparently stutters. So he's got a speech impediment and therefore don't want the cameras in court. In Limpopo, the state and the defense team are expected to give closing arguments in the bail application of 5 men facing 4 charges of violating graves, corpses and defeating the ends of justice in the Mukaya periodical court outside Tuyondo. 2 traditional leaders are among the 5. Still in Limpopo, 5 prisoners who were rearrested after escaping from the Kutama Sintumule maximum security prison last week are due to appear in the Louis Trichardt Magistrates Court. They escaped during a strike by prison warders at the facility. 2 of them are still at large. They were serving sentences for murder, rape and robbery, among others. Now, these are some of your court stories. We'll keep you updated with these developments on these cases. Let's now take a short break and we'll be right back after that. You don't want to go away. We'll talk to the Educational Transformation Network on the leak report on higher education. Dr. Lechwabe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Pump up your energy, keeping you in action through sports updates while resting at home. This is what's happening in your world of sports every weekend.
In the second half, Kolisi and Jaco Kriel combined well, and Kolisi scored his second try. He was also named man of the match.
Confusion from the West defenders gifted Batosi with a close-range goal.
Masina, you touch for Penalty, it's 1-0! Cato City!
In the 10th round, he pinned a visibly fatigued McGregor on the ropes and hammered the Irishman before the referee stepped in to stop the bout.
He's a tough competitor. He's a lot more experienced, especially in the later.
Keep it locked on Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday at 20:30.
As promised, back to the Fees Commission report and the looming hashtag Fees Must Fall protest. The outgoing WITS SRC Secretary General Kamil Ali says that if what is in the leaked Fees Commission report is anything to go by, there will be a reaction from WITS students. Speaking to SABC News this morning, Ali said that he's not sure if the reaction will be a shutdown.
Again, a shutdown I'm not so sure of. However, a reaction of some sort, there's definitely going to be. Students have been disgruntled at, one, the delay in the release, and two, the contents of the leaked report. You know, I mean, I've been engaging briefly with students over the past 2 days, and it's not been good. But I mean, yeah, it's essentially as an SRC, you take your mandate from students, you know. So if it's students that say, look, let's go, and then you need to go and provide the leadership there.
Yeah, because I mean that is vitally important in order to do that. If you talk about, we were having this conversation off air, in fact, that a lot of students want to go to university and they have all the right to do so. But like you yourself said, sometimes it's a status thing more than anything else. Whereas there are TVET colleges, there are technical colleges that can offer somebody a trade that can go out and start earning a living, but yet a lot of people study these degrees and they can't even find a job after they've done that. But the fight is there to get that. What are your views on something like that?
Look, I think there's an issue with the system, because I think that if we are truly to provide access to young people, to tertiary institutions, be it a TVET college or a university, there needs to be proper mechanisms in place in ensuring that those people succeed there. I mentioned to you briefly that at WITS we encouraged, well, university management has encouraged an increased intake of quintile 1 and 2 students, or schools from students from quintile 1 and 2 schools. However, the support structures are not there, so they fall through the cracks. So that's a systemic issue, right? With regards to TVETs, a lot of those students are funded by NSFAS, right, which is a loan scheme. The proposal that I've read in the leaked report is that there's going to be a continuation of the loan scheme. The issue with the loan scheme is that it is a loan, you know, it's not a grant, it's not something that's going to enable you to start that better life. Because the minute you come out of the university or your TVET college, you're then required to pay back a loan. That, in addition to all the other expenses you have, you know, I mean, as South Africans, and majority black South Africans, they have to take care of family members, you know, they have to provide an education for their cousins and their nieces and their brothers and sisters, you know, which is a societal issue, you know. And I think that given the fact that we're seeing these problems with NSFAS, another loan scheme proposed by government is really, I don't see it working. I don't see it being well received by students either.
Meanwhile, University South Africa has expressed concern at the leaked report into the Commission of Inquiry into Higher Education and Training. President Jacob Zuma commissioned that report in January 2016 following widespread student protests that rocked the country. The commission was headed by the retired judge, Jonathan Heher. University South Africa said in a statement that the report indicates an irresponsibility and a deep lack of understanding of the conditions on campuses. Now the question is, will this report lead to more student protests? And what can be done to avoid such protests? To talk to us about this and what's more to follow, we are joined by Dr. Reginald Lehwabe from the Higher Education Transformation Network. Doctor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thanks very much, and thanks to the listeners at home.
First and foremost, I would like to get your assessment from the leak report that did indicate that free higher education is not feasible.
Well, we wouldn't like to preempt the actual report, but we reasonably expect the Fees Commission report to have a number of detailed findings. And amongst others, as you remember, this was a process that resulted out of a commission of inquiry, and I would imagine that the commission has interrogated quite a number of proposals on the table. Some we might not fully support, some we just merely have to go along with. But however, what we wish to emphasize is that it is important that the state releases this report because the disruptions in higher education are indirectly linked with the availability of the report and consultations with regards to the fees for 2018, and also the uniformity and agreement by all stakeholders, including student role players, that on the fee increments going forward.
Now, there are indications, Doctor, that the report might be released by the end of this week. Do you think that that's perhaps a little too late? And why did the President hang on to this report so long?
Well, we would not want to speak on behalf of the President, but however, we welcome the report, the speedy issuing of the report and the consultations around the report, to make sure that at least universities, in terms of their strategic management planning processes, are able to plan forward and able to, on time, agree with stakeholders and get uniformity with all stakeholders in terms of what are the fee increments that are going to take place in 2018. But also, most importantly, the next 5-year and 10-year strategy of the state with regards to funding free quality higher education, which we believe as a stakeholder that is indeed possible.
Well, at this point in time, it doesn't look possible because the leak report indicates that. We don't know what the final report would say. So what do you suggest to that? Because you also made some representations and indicated that free higher education is possible.
Well, as an alumni association, it is our belief, yes, indeed, that the state has the requisite resources to be able to fund free quality higher education. But also, most importantly, we have put quite a few proposals on the table. And one of them is that it is an accepted fact internationally around the world that the responsibility to fund higher education does not belong to the state alone, and that the private sector has to play a role. And it is why it's one of those proposals we have tabled is to ensure that we have a 1% increase in the skills development levy, which is ring-fenced to recapitalize the operations of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. But going beyond that, we are saying that there are some institutions that clearly, in our view, can afford free quality higher education. All we are saying is that institutions of higher learning, as represented by Universities South Africa, cannot present themselves as one amorphous group. They are not the same. There are some institutions of higher learning which are sitting with reserves. If I can count Universities of Cape Town, University of Pretoria, University of Stellenbosch, amongst others, that those who are sitting in excess of over 30 billion rands in terms of investments and reserves. So in our view, those institutions of higher learning, yes, can indeed afford to start utilizing their own funding to roll out the free quality higher education, perhaps for the next year or two. Mm-hmm. But however, most importantly, we've also reiterated that those institutions which are sitting with those excess reserves and those excess investments need to either consider repaying those funds back to the National Treasury so that this can be allocated and freely shared with the rest of the sector.
Yes.
But going beyond that as well, we've also indicated that there are technologies that are available that can be utilized to roll out access. A student from a poor community does not necessarily have to be physically in class at an institution of higher learning to be admitted within that institution. There are technologies which are available to the mainstream public universities in the form of telematics, which can enable a lecturer to deliver a course remotely from within a studio setting to a group of learners who ideally could be sitting in a community hall somewhere in a poor community. So those are some of the items, those are some of the proposals that we believe can be considered. But of course, we do not want to preempt the report. The report also spoke in terms of the quarterly, the interim report.
Doctor, unfortunately,
other proposals such as the graduate tax, which we don't necessarily have a problem with.
Doctor, I've got to stop you there. Thank you. Unfortunately, we need to go to Parliament, but thank you so much for your time in joining us in our Pretoria studios. That was Dr. Reginald Lechwabe from the Higher Education Transformation Network talking to us about the leaked Fees Commission report and possible student protests, which we didn't touch on because right now the Social Development is in a joint meeting with Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, as well as the Portfolio Committee on Social Development. It's currently underway. Let's cross there live.
That letter was following earlier discussions which were held with Sassa in up to May, and including the workshops to try and assess the capabilities of the post office to assist the social security agencies. With those few remarks, I thought I should just give that context, that ours is to try as an organ of states to resolve the dispute as quickly as possible. And we're hoping that the officials will actually do that. Unfortunately, they have not managed to deal with this matter. At a government level, me and the minister serve in the ministerial committee, which normally meets and try and deal with the issues and get progress report and give guidance. Unfortunately, we have not taken this matter to that forum yet. So I thought I should just give that context so that before I hand over to my chairperson, Comfort Ngiti, and his team to make a short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. Let me, because we just have to deal with certain misconceptions which have been created, and I'll ask the CEO to deal with this. The first one is that, as we all know, SAPO previously paid social grants. So you can't test us whether we can do it or not do it because we have already been tested. Secondly, we were appointed by the former CEO, and from our point of view, that letter is valid and still hold water. It was after the advice of the Treasury Department. And from a legal point of view, we see that letter as an appointment. Then Sassa requested to assess us in terms of the CSIR report. From what we had seen, more than 90%, we were successful in most respects according to CSIR. And in our view, we are ready to do what we are asked to do, but I'll ask Mark to deal specifically with the things that are sometimes created in the media. For example, do you need a license to pay social grants? You don't need any banking license. We have been doing it already. And thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Ministers, Honourable Members of Parliament, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to state our position. The purpose of my presentation is just to provide clarity on some of the issues where I think ambiguity has set in. And I will be brief. In the first slides, which go to a high-level overview of the journey to date, I think many of those particular dates have been read into the record by the discussions that have preceded mine. But I wanted to table all of the relevant dates, which are on slides 3 and 4, which set out the various engagements and set out the timeframes, and in particular make note of the fact that there were any number of engagements preceding the CEO's letter to SAPO for the appointment. So it wasn't an unguided situation that it went under. But I'll leave all of those because they're historical facts. Let me talk, if I may, Chairperson, to the possibility of SAPA being a solution aggregator, which is the collaborative letter of appointment that we got from the CEO. I think our primary purpose in wishing to assist Sassa is to avoid a duplication of investment. When in an intergovernmental framework you invest in one another's capability, you build an asset for the state. When you outsource such a capability, you create a dependency on the private sector. We would argue for creating an asset in the state. The entire value chain between organs of state can be properly monitored and managed jointly with SAPA and Sassa during the build, operate and transfer period, and we can essentially put into effect the wishes of government in the social service which they provide. It would be easy for us in due course to transfer those contracts back, and we could work together towards what is an ever-changing description of a seamless customer solution. SAPA's solution is affordable. In fact, I'd go further than that in saying that any monies and economics which are transferred to SAPA remain within the state. So the price to us is not the driving factor, and we will take instruction on the price if that needs to be the case. We would have various economies of scale in the aggregator. So, for example, the cash in transit services, which are outsourced, neither of the two bodies can provide those as we stand. But we also use cash in transit services as the post office quite significantly. And if we combine the two contracts, our unit cost for delivery would be reduced substantially. It's in that sense that we would bring our economies of scale to bear. The primary focus, and one thing that we were not awarded in SAPA, was the banking services. And I think it's appropriate for me to set out the capabilities of Postbank in this particular context. Okay. It's an autonomous division of SAPA, and its financial transactions are strictly segregated from SAPA. There is no interference, no cash flow that passes between the two in terms of anything other than service provision agreements. I need to make it clear that we are a designated participant in the national payment system. We perform all our own interbank transactions, clearing and grant recipients full interoperability of access to all ATMs, retailers, and point-of-sale purchases. So like any other autobank card, Postbank is in a position to provide that service. It was one of the points on which we were apparently disqualified because we can't do. We can do it. We're a full member of the Payments Association of South Africa and the Banking Risk Information Center. We're full members of Visa, MasterCard, with card issuing and card acquiring licenses with both associations. Our application for registration as a bank was submitted to the Reserve Bank on the 26th of June. We should bear in mind that the primary purpose usually for applying for a banking license is to take deposits from the public. We already are licensed to do that in terms of the Postbank Act. So this was just to provide more fully fledged banking services. It needs to be made clear that the payment of social grants is a transactional service. It's not a risk lending service. It is simply the accommodation of cash flows. And I should also point out that money, different from parcels, spends most of its time in a computer, not on the back of a truck. So this is a systems capability that needs to be tested, not a credit or risk capability. We have 5.7 million customers in Postbank. We have 5 billion of their money on deposit, and we have 8 billion in cash and near cash instruments with banks and Treasury. We are the highest capitalized bank in South Africa. We have the highest capital adequacy ratio of all banks, and we're the 7th biggest bank in the country. And we've been around, not for that long, Chair, only 142 years. SAPA, and going to the Postbank capabilities, I think there were misconceptions about our capabilities. We are indeed capable of issuing interoperable cards, and we already do that. We are, of course, able to prevent debit orders against private accounts, and on that matter, as an organ of state, we will take instruction and comply with whatever the government's requirements are in terms of access to individual accounts. We are able to settle banking transactions. Standard Bank is our clearing bank, and so there is no substance in the notion that we are not an acquirer or in a merchant. We are, through Standard Bank, which is, I'm sure, a household name for most of you, a recognized clearing bank which clears all of our transactions already. Because we're a full participant in the national payment system, all of our counters are considered as ATMs in terms of how you define an ATM. And beneficiaries can withdraw funds at will from there and various other places. We do not need to register as a merchant for the payment of Sassa grants. So the disqualification on the basis that we can't register a merchant is not with any substance. Bear in mind that the receipt of social grants is predominantly a one-way transaction, the drawing of cash on that ability. Okay. There was a notion that we'd suggested a staggered payment account. I thought it was quite a clever idea, actually. We thought, why don't we pay people on their birthdays? It was just an idea, and it would just reduce all of the queues from being at the same time at the same place every month. But of course, we'd abide by whatever Sassa's payment schedules might be. We did provide details of our contracts with our subcontractors during the due diligence process. And in fact, it's recorded here in the CSIR report that we provided that information. I got this report yesterday, which I downloaded from the website. I've been through it, and I want to talk to a couple of points in it. First of all, this report was received by Sassa 6 weeks ago and was part of their consideration in arriving at their conclusions, which their bid adjudication and bid evaluation committees have gone through after receipt of this report. And the information, some of the information that is claimed we haven't given is actually provided in this same due diligence report. I table it. But I think I need to refer a little more to the due diligence report, which I have in front of me. And I went through it. To be honest, I was quite nervous when I first opened it, and he saw it yesterday. There are 218 categories of performance in this report. Of the 218 tests, there were only 8 where it said the requirements weren't met. I went to a government school, and you still paid for schools in those days, but when I went to school, 97% was a pass, not a fail. And that's what we achieved, according to the CSIR's evaluation, in terms of the fact that only 8 out of 218 of the requirements were apparently not met. We will contest 6 of those, and we regard 2 of them as not applicable. Okay. SAPA can produce and deliver the cards in terms of our contract with Gibraltar. We'll name them now because it's in the CSR report, which is a public document. We can produce 2 million cards after 8 weeks, and after that, after the card design has been approved, 2 million cards every 3 weeks. We do therefore have the capacity to produce the cards, and that capacity has been agreed with Gibraltar, and their contract is available if you wish to inspect it. We asked them to give a summary of the contract, which we haven't tabled. At that stage, we regarded that particular contract as confidential, but if it's required, we can table it. Let me go a little further. As far as cash payments at pay point, the point I want to make is one of principle. If SAPA is invited to assist, we can provide a coverage that is greater than or equal to anybody else. We're not saying we can do stuff instead of, but if you're looking for a service provider, we've got 2,500 points of representation, which no one else has. So whatever your distribution capability is, we can enhance that by that many points of payment. As far as the actual payment of cash in the deep rural areas, I think it's common cause by now that is most likely to be performed by cash and transit companies who are specialists, in particularly as it relates to the security which is required at those actual points of payment. There's some other points which I think we need to make clarity. We have never approached the Reserve Bank to take over the Grindrod Code. We have had discussions with them on the basis of them approaching us to look at whether there was a transaction. We've never progressed that at all. I think our argument for wanting to help is, and for having a different view about which services were offered, I mean, essentially, Sassa invited us to look at systems design, the creation of the biometrics and other systems. We might even argue, as a friend in government, that they perhaps should go to CETA for that. It's not our core competence. Our core competence is provision of banking services, and we would argue also that the provision of the core banking service is inseparable from the provision of the banking delivery service. It would be inefficient, at least, for SAPA Postbank to develop the core banking system and then ask another bank to deliver over that system. The two go hand in glove. I don't think any other bank would wish to adopt our system in their final delivery. Okay, and it's our core competence. I've been to what we do. Postbank at the peak does about 20 million transactions a month. On average, we do somewhere between 8 and 14 million transactions a month. We are a fully operational bank. There are two slides which go to the specifics of the components of our value chain, Chairperson, which I just table for the sake of completeness so that there can be cross-reference made for those who wish to go to the RFP responses. And so I won't go through those two slides explicitly. There was a debate about our financial capability. I've said before that the Post Bank, which is insulated from the economics of the Post Office Group, has got a net asset value in excess of 3 billion rand, which is represented in cash and near cash. We have all of the ATMs, mini ATMs and card acceptance devices. We have partners which have got adequate capital to provide all of the equipment acquisitions, and we have engaged with them. We have sufficient funds for branch capacitation. We have sufficient well-trained staff, and we have an entire staff planning program which we tabled and presented to the CSIR. As far as core banking is concerned, I've talked about the 3 billion in equity. Even with the most stringent of capital adequacy requirements, which would require a 28.75% capital adequacy, whereas most banks operate around 10 or 12%, so 3 times the norm, we would still have something like 1.5 billion of excess capital, which could be utilized to expand the core banking licenses and hardware at an estimated cost of 90 million and another 79 million. We've obviously costed all of the expenses we need. We need to replace 12 million cards at an estimated once-off cost of about 425 million, and that will be recovered over time through the service fee in the 5 years before we hand this over back to Sassa. We just need to increase our call center capacity, which would cost us another 6 million, and the network upgrade, which is currently underway, would cost an additional 50 million. All of those we have sufficient capital for and sufficient cash immediately available to spend. I think we also need to bear in mind that there are significant differences in the economics of the transactions that we've proposed. For example, and I could go through this all in detail, we have tabled it before, we would let interest be earned on undrawn monies, whereas previously that interest was retained by the bank. There are other very explicit, we would allow for 3 free ATM withdrawals a month, whereas previously they were paying money for those ATM withdrawals, and so on. So the numbers in terms of the price per unit are not comparable unless you dig deeply into what we have included. Interest, for example, is a significant number every month on undrawn balances. That never accrued to the beneficiaries in the existing system. We can't understand that. So, if I can summarize, Chair, because I also wanted to allow for questions. We, as the Minister said, we still regard ourselves in a situation where we have a legally binding letter based on a demonstrable capability, and we would like to revert to that if needs be. But we would certainly like to offer ourselves up again, having our hope dispelled of some of the misunderstandings about our capabilities, so that those can and have been put to the test. This was an independent assessment of us. So, in the spirit of collaboration, we sit here offering to accept an appointment to provide the banking and card production services, which will require the integrated system development that we have, And we would argue that at a minimum, those go to the core capabilities that the post office can offer. Time is not with us, and we would take guidance if we were to be able to now move forward on this. We would seek to do so in an extraordinarily collaborative way, both with the incumbent suppliers and service providers, and of course the project owners. So, Chair, if I may conclude by just saying, we've examined in some detail all of the points that were made in the due diligence report and the points that were made in response to our inability to deliver. And we find a different verdict when we look at it ourselves. And we would argue we sit here ready to help if it is that we can. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thanks very much. In interacting with my chairperson here, DG of National Treasury, maybe we'll come back to you. I would like to give Comrade Vincent, and depending on the issues he raised, we'll still want to come back to National Treasury and just get their sense of how they think things have progressed. Comrade Vincent? Is your mic on?
Oh, Chair, I was raising my hand to propose that the DG of National Treasury gives his input. And my motivation, Chair, is that correctly, as Minister Kwele said, the executive authority have got no role to play in procurement. The role is the officials. Now, we've heard from the CEO of Sassa last week. We heard from the CEO of the Post Office this week. Totally contradictory arguments. And I think it's proper that we then hear from National Treasury what their view is. Because I think National Treasury are the appropriate body to call in the bid adjudication and the bid evaluation team to clarify some of these things. So if we allow him to speak, or the DG to speak first, Chair, then I think we'll have a more productive meeting. That's my proposal, Chair.
No, it's fine. DG?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, honorable members. Chair, maybe let me start by saying, just to put a whole lot of things in perspective. Firstly, procurement in this fashion, as honorable members would know, that it will be the responsibility of the accounting officer, in this case of Sassa. However, and Chair, you did mention at the beginning of the meeting that because of the magnitude of the number that's at play here, we would obviously be interested. Yes, we will be behind in making sure that those procurement processes are above board, 1, 2, and that there's value for money. We're spending almost 170, 200 million rand a month on the grant administration side of Sassa. And our interest, obviously, would be that that number should be 0 and still render the service. Or it should, value for money would obviously dictate that it's actually less. So those are the first two principles that I think we must note up front. We have been engaged with Sassa, even from the previous CEO, on this matter. And at the time, the main issue was around the participation of CSIR1 and including participation of SAPO as an entity. We did not have an issue about SAPO's participation per se, because we know that there's a 2010-2011 judgment that basically allows SAPO to play in the space. And this was an issue between Sassa and SAPO at the time. So we knew that in terms of SAPO being appointed, we did not have an issue. But what we said at the time was that it is important that a hybrid approach is implemented in paying social grants. And this was a conversation after the court processes, whereby we said hybrid in that all banks, we are saying not necessarily SAPO in this case, but all banks should be able to participate. If it means a hybrid, again, meaning even if Sassa has to appoint a service provider to do to pay cash, with the delivery trucks, that must be allowed. If it means there must be some beneficiaries who should actually go to various pay points, that must also be allowed. Because thinking that once you diversify the process of payment, there'll obviously be value for money, and then we can determine. The third key important thing that the committee should note was that Sassa then wrote to us asking for a deviation. What deviation was it for? It was deviation to engage with SAPO, which we duly granted, and then so that we didn't want to be seen to be stalling the process. Basically, that process was undertaken in July, and SAPO, as we heard this morning, was then confirmed and discussion between SAPO and Sassa took place. The key issue was the CSIR and how CSIR come into play. And we are again watching it from a distance, how CSIR comes into the picture, because due diligence was key and critical.
Just a minute, DG. I'm sure somebody whose phone is not off. All right, let's continue. I'm not going to give the Netanyahu gaze at the UN. Continue.
A due diligence process was therefore undertaken, as the CEO of SAPO indicated, and he was reading some extracts from the report. So and as I said, it's something that we're behind and looking at very closely in terms of what can emerge out of that process. Number 4, what is also critical and important is that it should be noted that, as I said, this process is a Sassa CO, is a Sassa process where, depending and deciding as to who should be sitting in the bid adjudication or bid specification committee, it is essentially Sassa's responsibility. Now, whether we get invited or we invite ourselves is another thing to a meeting, of which obviously we were not part of, and we left that to Sassa to undertake, and when need be, would obviously stand ready to grant or not to grant a deviation if requested. So to date, I can confirm that where we sit is a Sassa-led process. We obviously are worried that firstly, grants should be paid and should be paid, at the least cost come 1st of April next year, and that if there's ways and opportunities to save from the 170, 200 million that we spend every month, we should do that. Now, if SAPO and what they propose is going to arrive or give us that, then it's something that obviously we should look at very closely. Or if through an open, another bid process that Sassa has undertaken, if it's also going to deliver that, maybe that should also begin an opportunity. But again, I think, Chair, maybe I'm not taking this away from the committee this morning, and the Minister of...
We're breaking away briefly from Parliament, but we'll get back right away. Let me just remind you of your top stories. The Social Development Minister, Batabile Dlamini, has arrived in Parliament, where she is currently appearing before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts and the Portfolio Committee on Social Development regarding this Sassa debacle. You already had some controversial statements there coming from the Post Office, who says that they are ready. The SABC promises that programming will not be disrupted as workers' union issue notice to strike. And Wits Student Representative Council is to consult with the students on the hashtag Fees Must Fall protest. Those are your headlines. Let's now go back to Parliament, where the Sassa debacle is in discussion.
We are always called to the bid adjudication committees to be observers. And we have always made ourselves available to play that role. But on this one, so we obviously are not there. But however, if need be, we would obviously want to be participating as observers, so that the process from beginning to end is seen to be we actually have to oversee based on the billion that we almost more than $1 billion that is spent on administration, and on 120 billion on the grants budget. Thank you very much.
All right, now I'll revert back to Comrade Vincent. Yeah, no, no, just please. No. I said I'm giving Comrade Vincent, and he said, can we allow National Treasury to speak first? National Treasury has spoken, so I must go back to him. Comrade Vincent?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm grateful that DG spoke, and the reason why, Chair, is because taking your lead when you opened up, you indicated that we should not speak for speaking's sake in this meeting. And there's clearly a deadlock. SAPA says we can, one, produce cards, which was a disqualification last week. Two, they say that they are playing in the banking space, which was part of the disqualification last week. So my question then would be, Chair, and I'm not sure who's going to answer it, but my question would be, what is the deadlock breaking mechanism? Because the politics, I really think the IMC must sit and take a decision. Because there's no ways that South Africans can't get their money on the 1st of April. So that's the politics of it, and I don't think anybody's disputing the politics of it. But the implementation, DG, from National Treasury, if there's a deadlock, what is a deadlock breaking mechanism? And the last point that I want to make, Chair, is that I don't think that we can divorce ourselves from it. Because if we don't insist that there's a deadlock breaking mechanism, and a year down the line we find that there was, as the CEO of SAPA says, duplicate payments or unnecessary expenses, then clearly as Parliament we would have failed in our oversight responsibility, because we can't, after today, argue that we were not aware of it. Today we were made aware that there is this potential. And if we continue to allow this process to happen, and a year later we find there's unauthorized, irregular, fruitless expenses, then Parliament has failed. And I don't think that we should allow ourselves to fail because officials aren't able to see each other. So what is the deadlock breaking mechanism? Is the question that the accounting officer should answer, if there is in fact a deadlock. In fact there is, because that's what they're saying. There's a deadlock. How do we overcome this deadlock breaking? And the second point, I think the IMC or the Inter-ministerial would have to start playing their role, because ultimately the political authority, I mean, what we're sitting here, Chair, is this is a means to an end. The end is that South Africans must get their grants at the end. That's the end process. And that's the responsibility of ministerial committee, Chair. So those would be my two comments for now.
All right. Yeah, no, Tim, hang on. I see the Minister of Social Development is anxious to give further clarity or bring a solution. Comrade Minister.
Chairperson, thank you. I think it's going to assist us to give the committee the response of the post office to the request for proposal. I'm not trying to extend your time in looking into this thing, because some of the things that the CEO is talking about here are not in their response. And therefore, we could not anticipate that they were going to be able to do some of the things. And if
Honorable, thank you so much.
Minister, with due respect, we have done this process before, and we have run in circles. What he presents and what we are saying, we know exactly what's going on. And your staff, no, Minister. No, wait, Minister, but I'm talking to the chair.
Please, please, Honorable Minister, allow the Honorable Member to make his point. You are protected, Comrade Nyan.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying, Chair, the acting CEO of Sassa, when she left us this other day, said to us, we are meeting with the post office to sort all the details. And our expectation as of today was to work on that detail. The fact that now suddenly there's new things coming up, it's not our area of interest. Our interest, and we expressed it quite clearly to the acting CEO, that you come here, you sort your problems with Sassa, with SAPO, and you tell us exactly today, what is it that you have agreed on? That's all we were looking for. This long route is not going to take us anywhere. We gave SAPO a special, because we have not listened to them. Now we have listened to them, we want to hear, rather than what is it that we are going to do from here, you see. Because we have heard what, the SASA have said to us before.
Your order stands. I can see almost about 10 hands up. But
Chair, I'd like to raise a point of order. We moved into this meeting, Chair, with a set structures.
But I didn't acknowledge you.
No, but... And now suddenly everybody is talking. This is a point of order. I'm raising a point of order. At the beginning of the meeting, we had a set procedure, a set structure as how we were going to handle this meeting. And now suddenly we are going completely off that structure, and I'm getting very suspicious that there is going to be a suppression of questions today, which affects my ability to conduct oversight, which I was elected to do. And so I would like to just request that the chairs between themselves...
I didn't acknowledge you.
No, I'm not finished with my point of order.
There are many hands that are...
I'm not finished with my point of order is, can the chairs... Can we please go back to the procedure that was agreed upon before the meeting in terms of the questioning? Otherwise, this is going to, like last week, be diluted.
As we chair this meeting, we saw it fit to actually acknowledge members who wanted to speak. And we're still going to continue because they have a right to speak as well. But I was going to say, Honorable Minister, that it is important you have been given your time to give input. SAPO has done the same, and we are not going to allow a situation where is their word against your word, because ours was to get information from all the parties that are involved, and then allow a process of members to interact with that information. However, we will allow time for you to speak, but at this moment, members are interacting with the information from your presentation, from SAPO, from National Treasury. Can I acknowledge, Honorable Member? And point of orders. Which are the point of orders? Yeah. If it's one, it's okay. Honorable Malkhas, if it's a point of order, can I acknowledge point of orders? Mama Vander Melve, you are on.
Yes.
Thanks, Chairperson. Not you now. Thank you.
Chairperson, if we're giving point of order, we're all going to stand and say point of order. Sisi politicians, and we are all boiling out, you know. We all want to say something. So, Chairperson, in the last meeting, the very last meeting that we had in the evening last week, we had agreed that we were going to write a letter to the Minister of Social Development, Minister of Telecommunications, and Minister of, the chairperson of the Inter-ministerial team, which is Minister Jeff Khadebe. I was hoping that we'll see Minister Jeff Khadebe, because, we can't keep on going round in circles. We're going to say this has to go to that level when we had said today was the chance for us to have this level. So I need to, before I can carry on with my point of order, I need to know why is Minister Jeff Radebe not part of this meeting? What happened? Did we get any apology from him?
Let me ask my co-chair to respond to that, but maybe I must make this point, that we had not actually said they will be part of this meeting. We said we would, in fact, we were told they were going to have a meeting today, and then we said we would try to go and find them in that meeting. But I'm not disputing the fact that there was reference to the IMC. And it was also good for Minister Kwele to be here together with the entity. But I don't think it removes that key issue of us having to talk about the deadlock that Honorable Vincent is raising, that there must be a facilitation as to how do we go about. But let me allow my co-chair to respond directly to whether Minister Radebe was contacted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, comrades. Yes, I did interact with the Minister, Comrade Jeff Radebe. He indicated to me that he is not a member of the IMC, and he is not the chairperson of the IMC. It is the President of the Republic who is the chairperson of the IMC.
Then, on that point, I was still part of the order.
Yes, yes, you are. But yes, these members will follow you.
Yeah.
I've seen all the members that are coming. Can I not take new ones now?
Yeah.
Up until I
Chairperson-
finish this. Thank you very much.
Ibulela kakhulu, Chairperson. We've had 5 meetings, if not 4, if not 5 meetings with Sassa on this matter. This is the second time that the post office is given a chance to present, besides the meeting that we had in Pretoria. I'm not sure about the social development committee. And I know that both ministers understand the importance of the whole matter. You know, Tinaba Kola, we are saying, if you play with the most vulnerable people, you are dealing with God. We do not want God to judge this government or this country because of the mistakes that we are making. We are talking about the most vulnerable people, the poorest of the poor, and today we are saying to them, we do not care of what happens to you. We've been saying, and I agree with Comrade Vincent, you know, we've had so many presentations, both ministers. We've had so many presentations. And when you go to SAPO, they're saying something else. When you go to Sassa, they say something else. And we've been emphasizing as SCOPA, please do meet as government departments, because it makes sense for us to be working with government departments instead of taking service providers, especially a service provider from Australia, to come and deal with our issues when we have so many problems. So I think we have passed that stage, Chairperson. And if we keep on, talking and asking questions just for the sake of asking questions, I don't think we are going anywhere. We are not here because we do not have anything to do. We have so many things to do. I would like to say, Chairperson, I want to propose that if the chairperson of the inter-ministerial team or the chairperson or whoever is in charge of this process that we are talking about is the president, then it's the president that we need to talk to, because we are going nowhere. This one is saying this, that one is saying this. At the end of the day, our people who have made sure that all of us here in this room are working, including the officials, because if it was not for them, they wouldn't be here. Those people who have made it possible for us to be here in Parliament.
Please
and
allow
be their mouths.
others to have a
Yes.
bite.
I'm
Please allow
saying
them.
we need to have a meeting with the president as soon as possible and find a way of dealing with this matter. Next year, 1st of March, we are going to have a problem. And I'm saying we are going to fight and make sure that CPS does not come back, Chairperson.
Is that can I overlook you? Can you come in?
No,
Thank
please,
you. Thank
just
you,
a
ma'am,
minute.
and-
I hope you will allow others to.
Yes,
Please,
I'll be very brief, but-
Please assist me.
Yes.
Assist me,
I want to
Honorable.
assist you, ma'am. I want to assist
Please.
you, and I want to assist you in terms.
Yes, I know we all want to
I want
speak,
to
and I
assist
want
you
to do
in
exactly
terms
that.
of procedure. And my request is simply that the Honourable Vincent Smith has made a proposal that it be referred to the Inter-ministerial committee, which is the proposal that he's made. But I find it difficult to support the proposal if we don't allow for questions first, so that we can have in-depth knowledge whether we must support this. And obviously we all support the principle of breaking the deadlock, which is an important issue that the Honourable Smith has mentioned. So we would like to move towards a solution, Madam Chair, but firstly I think you must just allow the committee and members to ask questions in the ordinary fashion, as my colleague has requested you, and after the questions then we can put the question whether we support the proposal of an Inter-ministerial committee, which I think we might support, and we might be moving towards a solution in that regard. Thank you.
I think that's why I was acknowledging people. I was acknowledging them on the basis that proposals are being thrown in, but allow others also to make their own. So we go towards recommendations. Can I therefore go back to the two hands here, and then Honorable van der Merwe? No, okay, it's coming your hand now, but yes. Let me see the hands, yes, but we have had your bite now. Honorable Hope.
Please. Thanks, Chairperson.
Sorry, mine's not a point of order. Can I just get clarity? So it's Honourable Malgas, then is it myself, and then the Honourable Klengwa, or what is the sequence? Because we're a bit confused now.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's leave
No,
it.
Chair, for us to speak, we must be rowdy. I've been raising my hand, you are not recognizing me. Now, members who are just rowdy, you recognize them.
Oh, please.
Is that the rule?
Honorable member, please.
No, I'm asking, is that the
please,
rule?
let me actually clarify. These hands were long time up, and I was able to see them because I'm sitting here. Your hand came actually after that of Honorable van der Merwe. I'm telling the truth. There's no reason why I should lie. These hands, I even postponed them. Malgas's hand was first up. Can I continue with the way people lift their hands? Honorable Malgas.
Thanks a lot, Chairperson. I also would like the meeting to move on. But I have a bit of a concern. You know, we're setting a precedence. Because when we gave the order the way we're going to speak, the minister was asked to speak first. Then it came to the post office and we gave it to the Minister of Communications. And he made it very clear when he was speaking that he is not, you know, procurement is not his purpose, but it does not do it. And I feel what we didn't do here, because in last week's meeting, Sassa said, we meet in the post office, I think it's written here the 26th, the Thursday. And the minister is the political head. We didn't hear Sassa telling us what took place in that meeting. So I think we need a short input, and then we can continue with our questioning. Thank you.
Honorable van der Merwe, we take your point, but I don't want to respond to it at the moment because a presentation has been made. People are not necessarily referring to Sassa. Now they are still asking from the latest presentations that we have had. It's not that Sassa and the minister are going to be locked out. If I may actually correct that one. Honorable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and I think thank you very much for the presentations from both the ministers and their teams. I think on the issue of breaking the deadlock, which the Honourable Vincent Smith raised, I think today's meeting, you know, it's very important that we break this deadlock because there's 5 months left to 1 April 2018. And as we said before, the payment of grants is the lifeblood. It's what stands between life and death for millions of South Africans. So politicking, fighting, going around in circles, it's no longer an option because we've been doing this process for a very, very long time. So I want to get to the issue of breaking the deadlock. And I want to ask today, I've listened very clearly to Mr. Barnes. Mr. Barnes says, we've got the footprint, we've got the capability, we've got the capacity, we've got the history, we've got the background, we've done it before. And I want to direct my question to the Honourable Minister Batabile Dlamini. I want to ask, is it simply a case that Sassa does not want to work with the post office? I think we just need a clear, unambiguous answer today. We just want the truth. Is it a case that you don't want to work with the post office?
Okay.
Is it a case, Chairperson, I want to just ask a few questions if you will allow me.
Not a few, just ask an additional one,
Okay.
make them two.
I want to know whether it's simply a case that you prefer a private service provider, a private company to the post office. I think we need a clear answer on that today. I want to ask what has changed in terms of the Magwaza letter, offer letter that was sent to the post office vis-a-vis the non-offer that you've sent them in October, because as I understand it, Mr. Magwaza, at that stage your CEO felt that the post office had the capacity. Now you believe that they no longer have the capacity. Yesterday you told us in a press conference that you'll only be finalizing your procurement processes by the end of February. Are you therefore admitting that you will not meet the 1 April Constitutional Court deadline? And are you not concerned that you will be in contempt of the highest court of this land? Okay. And then finally, Mr. Barnes, the question to you is the original offer letter that was given to you, are you planning to take legal action or legal approach to enforce that letter as the first offer letter?
Okay, all right. Now we're going to go this way. It's Madlope, it's Kekane, it's Tim, and then it's Hlengwa. Then we'll come back to you. Yes, yes, comrade.
No. Thanks, Comrade Chair. I think last week when we said we need this particular meeting, it was because we want to get together facts. It was about facts finding. Because the presentation that we got, the shortcomings that we're hearing that Sassa is having, most of us did not believe that it's like that. And then we said, now we need the political heads of these departments because this particular matter is political, because it deals with service delivery, the lives of the people. So it's important for us to get the facts from all of them. It's unfortunate, co-chairs, that we listened to the others last week, Sassa, and now the post office as well as the Treasury, now they are talking, they never hear what they said last week. You know, I was of the view that maybe the CEO of Sassa is going to summarize, because when the minister was starting to talk, she was saying that no, the post office in their letter, what they are saying now is not the same. And it came out last week, if we remember very well. The CEO said, after Tim came up and said that the CEO of the post office is saying that they can do everything, she did say that what they wrote to them is not the same with what Tim is saying. It's not the first time that we are hearing about that. It was said last week. Okay. Because we want to get the facts as these both committees, we want to hear what transpired from the post office on their response to Sassa, because that's what came out last week.
All right.
After that, Chair, lastly, because also they did not say that they can't produce cards. They said they can only produce 2.4 instead of 4.2 million. That's what was said, presented by Sassa. So we want to hear, because according to the CEO, is saying 97% of the work they're gonna do. We as politicians will prefer that the post office is doing the work. But what we want to get is fact-finding, because when they fail at the end of the day, the people that will be responsible will be Sassa at the end of the day. So that's what we want. And also we want to get that capabilities and the capacity to understand that they are not going to outsource that work. That 97% is within their capabilities. Thanks, Chair.
All right. Comrade Kikan.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, let me start by saying we are venturing into another terrain. And I think you clearly indicated when we started this meeting that the reason why we adjourned the meeting last week was that we were informed by officials from Sassa that there's a meeting the following day. We then said, on the basis of that, let's allow that process. And they came back this morning. They clearly indicated to us that there was a deadlock in that meeting. And Vincent, oh, by the way, he's my friend, Honorable Vincent, came up with the way forward. And the way forward is very clear, that now that there is a deadlock, we need to look at a deadlock breaking mechanism. Now the question that I'm asking myself, is this a negotiating forum? And if not, the questions that we'll be asking, that is as honorable members, will that assist the process? If it is not, you clearly indicated that let's not talk for the sake of talking. If there's direction for us to break the deadlock, let's refer this issue that is to that structure and get a solution to this. Because we'll sit here the whole day and lament as to who is right and who is wrong. At the end, we are not going to, resolve this problem. If the proposal is the president is the chairperson of the IMC, urgently, let's get the president here and clearly indicate to him that there is a deadlock. These two departments seem not to be agreeing. We are saying, because we are empowered, that is to finalize this matter. We want you to finalize this matter. And we provide, that is timelines.
All right. Okay, fine. Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, it was agreed that we would work in our normal scope of fashion, which is to have an interaction with the officials, back and forth, and that's where you get your information. All right? This barrage of questions from one side to the other, frankly, lets the officials off the hook, because they just sit and listen to us and give nothing back. In actual fact, it's an easy day. So, Chair, the entire purpose of this inquiry, this hearing, this meeting, was to apply the Audi et alterum partem rule. And that is, let us hear the other side. And so today, SAPO have come and they've given us the other side. And I hear what my colleagues are saying about saying, let's break this deadlock in the IMC. But the point is, there are a lot of subtext and subtones going on here that need to be clarified. Because what will happen is there will be a deadlock breaking mechanism, and if we don't clarify those undertones that are clearly present, in a month's time, they will report back, we cannot break this deadlock. And then we are 4 months away from the deadline. And so it will continue. So I think here and now today, I would like to delve into issues that specifically relate to these undertones. And so, because clearly today you're not going to allow a to and fro, as Honourable van der Merwe got 5 or 6 questions in, I'm going to ask my questions. And the officials can, because clearly you are, I don't know what's, this is a very strange scope of environment and it's not what I'm used to. And I certainly hope that my worst suspicions are not confirmed.
Chairperson, can I
No, I'm busy.
Excuse me.
I'm on the mic.
Chairperson, excuse me. We have not come to attend a SCOPA meeting. This is a joint sitting. So please, when you address us, don't think we are visitors. We are here because we have taken a portfolio decision to come and meet. Please.
All right, thank you. Right, let's move on. So the questions I'm going to ask are as follows. Mr. Barnes, when you get a chance to respond, can you confirm how long you've been in the banking industry, number one? Number two, can you confirm for us, by my calculations, my colleagues' calculations, you said in order to upscale to be in a position to assist with payment grants, you're going to need to spend around about 650 million rand, and then a possible 50 million rand per annum for network upgrades. So that amounts to around about 900 million. So would you just confirm the veracity of that figure? Then I'd like to go to our Sassa friends. The Minister has said on a number of occasions that her upgrades, her idea of this whole costing thing is going to take 6.4 billion. So I'd like to just juxtapose the 6.4 billion against the 900 million, because obviously those are two hugely different amounts. Then I'd like to ask whoever here at Sassa can answer, because I don't think the Minister is entirely in touch with what's going on in Sassa. So others may be better placed to speak on this. Right, so the question is...
Just a minute, Tim.
I think I need a protection. The member cannot just throw words to me and nothing is said.
All right. Okay.
Please.
No,
please.
No, that's fine, Comrade Minister. I thought he meant you are not dealing with the day-to-day administrative issues. Okay. All right. No. Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Tim?
Okay, I didn't know sarcasm was unparliamentary. But anyway, let's carry on. So...
Chairperson, may I ask the member to withdraw what he said?
No, I think I've taken your point, Comrade Minister. Tim, let's...
All right, Chair. I won't engage in a battle of the wits with an unarmed person, so I withdraw my sarcasm.
Sure.
Right, can we please move on? Okay. Right. The question I want to ask, and I think the most appropriate person is the acting CEO. What can you specifically put your finger on the section of the CSIR report that disqualifies SAPO entirely from taking on the work? So that's the one question. In the scenario that SAPO, that you obviously have considered that SAPO don't do any of this work, which company did you have in mind in South Africa, or group of companies, that would be able to do it? And at what stage of readiness are they? The background to that is we have SAPO that CSIR say just need to scale up. So CSIR say three things. They see SAPO needs to scale up, they need to employ more staff, and they need to train staff. Those are the three major issues that CSIR say in certain areas. So which company do you have in mind? And I understand this is not a bidding thing, but you must have somebody in mind saying, you know, we've got SAPO here, and then we've got ABC over here could do the same thing. Otherwise, surely you would... Sorry, there's a bit of disruption. I just want to make sure you've got my question, Acting CEO. The issue is, in your planning, you're thinking SAPO can't do this, so there must be other companies that can. Do you have knowledge of any other companies? And if you do, what do you anticipate they are going to charge to scale up? So once again, we've got the 650 million, the 6.4 billion. What are your scenario projections in terms of what that's going to cost? Then, two last questions. Actually,
right.
three last questions. No, Chair, please. Please, not today. Okay, RFP. No, Chair, we received this document. I've just got three, and then I'm finished.
Sure.
We received this CSIR document from yourselves last week. We noticed that the RFP is not in it. When can you provide the RFP to us? We'd like to see who wrote it and what the terms of reference were. Then, second to last question, why did you not involve Treasury in any of your interactions? By my count, on the SAPO timeline, there were 13 interactions before the wheels came off in this last month. 13 interactions where you dealt with SAPO, you discussed capability, you discussed capacity, you issued a letter to them which SAPO, I believe, is legally binding. You've done all these great things to move us towards you, and now suddenly it's fallen off. Why has Treasury not been involved at any of those meetings? And then finally, last question, very simple. Does CPS have a banking license? You say SAPO don't, and that's why you don't like them. Does CPS have one? Do they have a banking license?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Hlengwa?
Hey, Chair. Thanks. Chair, maybe let me just say at the outset, I said I'm not a prophet at one meeting. And I warned then, and my worst fears have come to life. I told this meeting, the minister was saying that come 1 April 2018, we will see CPS left, right, and center paying these grants. And I said then that there was an effort which was being engineered to derail the post office. And precisely that has happened today. There was a meeting, a workshop in May. We have requested the details of that workshop, and we have never received them between Sassa and the post office. We've never received those details. We went to the Sassa offices after they'd failed to meet their own deadlines. And I remember quite explicitly, they were so happy about what I said, they even put it up on Twitter, when I told them, be committed to your own commitments. What happened? Those commitments came to zero. Chairperson, what is happening here, we are being undermined right to the gutters of what determines what undermined is. Because I certainly cannot understand, Chairperson, how it is that qualified people, and I use the term very cautiously, can engineer a national catastrophe of this magnitude and there's no consequences. We asked these very officials, who is in the IMC? It was them that told us that it is chaired by Minister Khateb. It is news today that it's the president. We are being fed lies day in and day out. Now, must we sit here and tolerate that kind of nonsense, Chairperson? I certainly cannot do it. Because we are undermining the taxpayers, no change. Because my comments are not coming in the form of questions, but I must ventilate these things on behalf of South Africans who are being undermined by these officials. Why is it that we are here? We have said what CPS is a bosom body of Sassa. And precisely that today is coming to fruition. We've had musical chairs of officials here who have tried to do the right thing and they've been chucked out because a national catastrophe is being engineered, Chairperson. So if we wanted to break this deadlock, the IMC will not help us. It has failed dismally. 0 out of 10. They failed. Because had they been doing their work, would not be in this mess that we are in now. So we're going to come here and ask questions for the sake of asking questions. Chair, I am putting a firm proposal to what a parliamentary inquiry is needed to look into this matter in its entirety. We have spoken about contract management before. It was not a matter of CPS or not. It was a matter of initially Sassa themselves engineered the collapse of the contracts because they knew what CPS was coming to an end, and they engineered a catastrophe then, and they're engineering one now. Chair, if it works like corruption, smells like corruption, looks like corruption, and is handled like corruption, then it is corruption. So, Chairperson, by end of business today, you're going to receive a formal letter from the IFP requesting that we institute a parliamentary process to investigate these things and hold all those people before us, Chair. Finally, I would really want Treasury to clarify me because the DG made a very telling statement and it worried me. I hope he can clarify it. When he says they granted the deviation because they did not want to stall the process, I would hope that's not the official reason why they did. I would like the reasons why they did, but that is at the heart of this thing. And finally, Chair, I've said before, and I'm saying it again, we are being fed these ngwane fairy tales in this whole thing. So it is now, because you know, the challenge I have, Chairperson, is that even information before the committee and committee members is not the same. Certain members are receiving information outside the committee. That is not fair. It does not assist the process. Let us be transparent in how we are doing these things. But quite frankly, Chairperson, we can sit here until the cows come home. A decision has been taken by Sassa that they are going to derail this thing because they want to bring back CPS.
Okay. Right. Comrade Chilwane, Comrade Mente, and then Ross.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Actually, Chair, I just wanted to speak, maybe probably for the sake of speaking. Yes, Chairperson, because what the answer that was, the question that was asked by Comrade Smith has not been vented into. And also to echo what Comrade Kekana has said, I don't know whether we have become a bid adjudication committee or a bid, what is it, BIC, the other one, the other name. Because our evaluation committee, because our role as this committee and this joint committee is to hold the executive accountable. But what we are doing today, I don't know, Chairperson, me included, what we are doing today, me included. But I wanted to state, Chairperson, that we are not mediators, but ours is a worry that we would want to see the court ruling or the court judgment being met by the 1st of April 2018. And the other comment that I wanted to comment on is the issue, two of my colleagues have already raised it, the issue on the role of National Treasury. The DG, Mr. Mrajani, said that they would really love to be part of the discussions, because the crisis at this kind of magnitude, be that National Treasury role is not effected, it's a worrying factor, Chairperson. I think we should echo that to say National Treasury should play their role, because they are the ones that they are giving money to either entities or departments. So it's not a question as it is, Chairperson, it was just a comment. But I don't know in terms of the National Treasury or in terms of the Minister of Social Development, what is it that they are going to do in terms of Honorable Tim, the Minister doesn't see me. You are obstructing my view. Thank you. Yes, I wanted to ask the Minister to say if they can be able to work hand in glove with the National Treasury. I think it will give a progress in what the debacle we are facing on, Chairperson. I think that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Chair. Chairperson, okay, I don't want to repeat what was said. But Comrade Vincent asked a question, how do we break a deadlock? There is two things that happened here. Now, before I get there, firstly, why is General Matagata not here? General Matagata Hawks. Why is she not here? Because we are facing perjury here. We're being told things that are not happening. And stories are interpreted the other ways that we don't understand. I don't know if we have invited her or we have stopped inviting the Hawks into the meeting, because there is perjury happening here in the meeting since last week. So I think we need to really take that seriously and start having, in fact, laying criminal charges against officials who lie to Parliament. You don't come to Parliament and lie. It's only us who can say whatever and we will not be taken to court for it. But we can't have officials that must come and account here and lie. It's not going to happen. Okay, secondly, Chair, The CSIR report, which the CEO of the post office had, he even quoted 97% pass. But the BAC and the BEC has a different scoring. Now it comes to my mind, who designed the scoring sheet of the BAC and the BEC? Who was involved? Because it's designed in a manner that SAPO must fail. How can in a body that is not in SAPO, in Sassa, support SAPO and score it 97%, when the BEC and the BEC scores it way lower? Now it goes to the deadlock. How do we break it? Chair, this is my proposal. Can we take both these reports, which are never coming to us, were never given? That's why Uhlengwa is so frustrated. We can also read and see these things. Can we ask National Treasury to take these documents, evaluate them, give us a report next week as to is SAPO fit to take the position of giving grants? Can we have that happening? And next week we can get a report from the National Treasury. Because between us, Sassa, and SAPO, we're never going to sort this problem out. We need another body that is going to do evaluation. And then secondly, I want to also support what Hlengwa has come up with. That report must come into an inquiry. That full inquiry must investigate who is busy cooking a failure of this process so that CPS can come back next year. We are not going to have CPS, but we need to get to the bottom of who is steering this ship to the wrong direction.
All right, thanks. Ross?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the DA position is also that we request the National Treasury to play a leading role and to furnish us with a report at least within 2 weeks. We also support the issue of an inquiry, but time is of the essence, and certainly parliamentary inquiries takes a long time. That is fine. But with regards to the Inter-ministerial committee, if we were misled that the Honourable Radebe is not the chairperson of that committee and that the president is heading that committee, I think it casts aspersions on the committee. But certainly the DA, I think we would like to voice our disappointment with the ministers present that it was never escalated to the Inter-ministerial committee. That's just an observation, Chair. And then I'd like to ask questions.
No, wait. Just make your point. Don't prefix it with DA this, DA that.
Okay, fine.
Then it becomes a problem.
The point is that both these ministers were members of the Inter-ministerial committee, and the issue of Sassa and the risk failure to pay grants on the 1st of April 2018 was never escalated at that committee. I think what we should do as SCOPA, we must ask for the minutes of the Inter-ministerial committee to see whether it was actually raised and whether that constitute the dereliction of duty by both ministers being present here today. Chairperson, then I'd like to ask the Post Office with regards to the latest medium-term budget policy statement, where there was an allocation to the Post Office, Mr. Barnes, of 3.7 billion rand in the medium-term policy statement with regards to debt settlement. Should it not be more advisable if there was such a huge allocation that to use it for perhaps infrastructure, systems, and I would like to have your views on that. And then also there was an indication, Chairperson, from the Auditor General that the Post Office is one of those entities, and that was in the audit outcomes of 2017, that might not be able to continue as a going concern. I think this committee needs to take note of that, and we would like to have the response of the Post Office in that regard as well. And then just dispelling misconceptions, the issue of the banking license. The 26th of June was an important day where there was an application made for a banking license. Has that banking license been granted to the Post Bank yet, or are you only operating in terms of Treasury regulations and Treasury interventions that you can continue with what you're trying to propose to us?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm also a member of the committee and has the right to speak. I've observed that others are asking questions. Questions are directed to Sassa, Minister, and Post Office. That's the work that is in front of us as chairs. 2, there is a strong feeling that people speak for the sake of speaking. But can I confirm that in my legal understanding, every member of a parliament as a portfolio has a right to speak. And it must be given that opportunity, whether it's foolish or wise, but it's a right that they come into this meeting with. And I would wish indeed to confirm that as long as you lift your hand, we don't know what you're going to ask. And you are not obliged to follow another person. It is your right to say what you think. And I would wish indeed, Coach, to raise a concern in that one. But at the same time, recommendations go to a conclusion that we must have an inquiry, that we must see the president, but all these have not been fully discussed. It's a recommendation that is not entertained, but seen as a decision going forward. And I would be very much willing to be assisted in understanding how we are managing. People are complaining that it is not managed the way it's supposed to. But my also feeling is that speaking of everyone who wants to speak is a key democratic approach that is there, provided for all members. 2, the issue that we had agreed to go to the IMC. I don't know now when we are going to invite the minister, to the president to come in, because we had taken a decision that today, after this meeting, we will try and interact with those. I don't know, Coach, because you were the one who was interacting with them, whether it was agreed that they must now come here in this particular meeting. That those things I would want to be clarified.
All right. No, my understanding, comrades, is that, as you rightly point out, when comrades raise their hand, they make inputs, they make suggestions. I think as we move towards the end, we'll then try and pull all those suggestions together and then come up. I'll give the 2 honorable members after team, and then Honorable Sonti.
Yes, it's Honorable Sonti.
I'm giving those who have not said a word yet. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm actually very distressed, and I'm very distressed that at this time last year we were sitting in exactly the same situation where the poor and the vulnerable are being held to ransom. Nobody else. The poor and the vulnerable are being held to ransom. And we have to pay their grants. And when we're sitting with a process that appears to be manipulated, they are the ones that suffer, and I find that terribly frustrating. My question to the Treasury. In the last meeting, the CEO, acting CEO of Sassa, stated that Treasury and Sassa were not meeting eye to eye in terms of the funding and financial requirements needed to go forward on this process. And I find it very disturbing that the CEO of SAPU quotes 650 million rand, and I've taken it from your slides, Mr. Barnes. And then we have another talk of 6.4 billion, which is the gap in that picture is alarming. My second question goes to Sassa, or goes to the Minister. Minister, were you at the meeting with SAPU last week when this negotiations took place and this contract was suddenly suspended or cancelled or not agreed to or whatever? And if not, why not? Because you are the accounting officer in terms of this whole department. Secondly, who exactly on your team is reporting to the IMC? Is it you, Minister, or is the whole of Sassa there? And if Sassa are there, why have SAPU not been invited to the Inter-ministerial committee to give their side of the discussions? I think it's very important that we understand who wrote this RFP that was given to SAPU and when it was written. We have been doing this going round in circles since 2014. That RFP, you had a whole advisory team, you had a whole task team who worked on this for a year, and all of a sudden an RFP comes up, whoops, in July of 2017. But this is a matter that's been worked on with advisory teams and task teams for over 3 years, if not longer already. And I would need answers to those questions. And second, and lastly, Chair, if I may, last week we were kindly given a copy of the CSI report, and yet sections 2 and sections 3 are missing from this report. Why were we not given the whole report? That makes me very restless. Because then it indicates that there is something that has been hidden from us when we don't get a whole report. And I'm very concerned that when we get this report, we don't get the RFP report, the RFP, to do a comparison to the CSI report against the RFP ourselves. We're not all in the dark. Some of us understand how to do that, and I find that very concerning. And lastly, and it's a comment, I have read the CSI report with the pages missing, and there is nothing in this report. There is not one page in this report that says SAPU cannot do the job. It states that they just need to upscale, they just need to train, and they just need to get more staff. I do not understand why we are sitting in this position. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Sango.
Thank you, Chair. I also would like to thank the ministers and their teams for the presentations. And my question...
Let me just remind you of your headlines. 10 people have been killed in a shooting incident at Matawani's Kop near Ladysmith in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. Sources say 5 people who were traveling in a small vehicle were shot dead by unknown people. And the South African Post Office refutes Social Development Minister's claims that it's not capable of taking over the Sassa grants. And the SABC promises that programming will not be disrupted as workers' union issue a notice to strike. Those are your headlines here on the newsroom, but we now go back to Parliament regarding the Sassa debacle.
In exactly the same place with the situation of the institutionalization of the grant payment system. But during the times when the preparatory work was being done for next year, there was a task team that consisted of the DGs, the DG of Social Development, the DG of Treasury, the CEO of Sassa, and all other people that were involved. I believe there was SAB even. There was the South African Reserve Bank in that task team. I would like to know what has happened to this task team, or has its work come to an end? And this is why we are where we are at the moment. And I wish my colleague in the IFP all the best with trying to get a full parliamentary inquiry, because we tried all that last year and it did not happen, and this is probably why we are where we are today. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
All right, sure. No, I said Sonti.
Yabonga, Chairperson. Okokuqala mina into endingayithetha ayingombuzo ukuthi nje i-comment. Okokuqala, Chairperson, ndiva ubuhlungu ngokokubana lo mnyango lona ubaluleke kakhulu kwi-South Africans. Ndicinga uba even namhlanje bonke abantu balindele ukuva iziphumo eziqaqambileyo. But okubuhlungu ngoku asitholi nto. Ukuthi nje into esibonayo ukuthi kuyadlalwa apha and kudlalwa ngabantu abadala. Kakhulu uSassa edibene noSapho. Namhlanje besilindele okokuba sibe sisiva izinto ezibalulekileyo for ababantu sihlelele bona apha namhlanje abahluphekileyo abalambileyo.
Okay.
Esilindele okokubana nge-1st zika-April 2018 babe bathola oko bakufanele ukuba babe bayakuthola. But into esiyitholayo apha asitholi into inesihlahla esicacileyo, kuyadlaliswa nje ngathi nangabantu bakuthi belizwe lonke liphela ama-South African.
Okay.
Bendikhe ndatsho ke Chairperson na last week kwiveki ephelile ndathi uSassa ngendlela enibona ngakona ulala ngengubo enye no CPS. Yiyo ke lento kunzima okokubana kube nesigqibo esipheleleyo esipasiswayo phakathi kwakhe edibene nophosa.
Okay.
Andiboni even kwezi nyanga nithetha ngazo ezi5 ezisele ukubana kukhona into ezawuba iyimpumelelo. Ndiva nithetha ngopresident ngoku okufanele ba abe uyeza apha ezophendula. Ndinexhala. Inoba sawubuyela back to the square kuyafana nje. Andinalo ithemba loba ikhona into ezawuphinda iphumelele. Xa kusathethwa ngopresident ndiyakhathazeka kakhulu ngabantu bakuthi. Kakhulu Chairperson enkosi.
Okay. Right, Comrade Anna must give Comrade Boy and Dudley. They haven't said a word. Yes, Comrade Boy and Dudley. Then I'll come back to you.
Comrade Chair, one thing that I want to clarify, and where we sit at the SCOPA, we support SAPO. We support SAPO with all its weaknesses. We're not going to be shaken about that one. That's why we've been very clear in all this month that a relationship between SAPO and Sassa is a working relationship. And that means that's going to be our first matter we put in front of any person that we are going to deal with that. We want to resolve that particular matter. We are not interested in CPS. And we're not going to dance to the tune of CPS. The second thing that we must do, Chairperson SCOPA and the Joint Committee, is to accept and acknowledge the report of the panel. The report of the panel becomes very much important, Chairperson, because it explains all the weaknesses of the state and how it deals with this particular matter. How the ministries and the Inter-ministerial committee deals with it has been not clearer in our minds. And that's why we are saying, let's take a step up. Let's re-engage the IMC about this particular report. But the incapabilities that we have been able to show last week about Sassa are rewritten and have been expressed quite solidly in the Parliament report. And quite going along with what the panel says, it says we should work with the post office. SAPO and Sassa must work together. And that's why we're saying to the CEO, who's quite important, of Sassa, that tell us what are the problems. Now, she has not done it today again, because the panel says the leadership of Sassa seems not to be able to commit itself and be taking this matter a little bit serious. That's where our problem is. That's why we're saying, National Treasury, we have the report of the panel. I would have loved if you have gone it through and have a look at it. And we are saying as a collective, if we could hear from the different views that are expressed and the confidence that we do have in Treasury, is that you should come to the fore and provide leadership and deal with the technical matters that we are dealing with at this particular moment. Because if ever Treasury is not involved, we are going to go for a fight. And we think with your role being involved, because the panel is not confident of the leadership of Sassa. It has written it overall. I've read it many times last week. So it's important that where Treasury comes in, that it starts giving leadership. It can't outsource this particular responsibility to other people. We acknowledge this department and what, but we are in a level where we feel that you must come into this particular matter so that you can build the confidence of our people. It's quite correct that Mama is saying, it's quite correct what members are saying. We have run around in circles. We have done these processes before. And we were promised by both parties. We have spent a lot of time with SAPO. We have spent a lot of time with Sassa. But both parties have not been able to resolve the matter that is in front of us now. And the panel seems not to be confident. And the panel complains quite a lot like us now, that there's a lot of lack of information that is being provided to them, although there are important infrastructure in the negotiations that could be able to provide direction and resolution of some of the challenges that are taking place. That has not happened, Treasury. And if we can be like here now, I'll tell you quite frankly why I would have supported the Honorable Hlengwa on what Parliament could do. But the only thing that I have a challenge, Honorable Hlengwa, we only left with 2 weeks and 2 sessions, and we close. And that's why part of the suggestions of Sassa is to say the processes will only start in February. By that time, we're all coming back to Parliament. We would have been going into the State of the Nation address. And 2 months down the line, there's expectation by our people to say what has been resolved. Now, you can't be issuing tenders in February with an expectation that you go to the Constitutional Court and says, do this. You see, it's not going to be possible. You see, that's all where we are going to have a problem with you. But we would have to re-emphasize our position that how do we as parliamentarians, because one thing that we should be acknowledging that we've been successful so far in being able to hold them to account. And that one I'm not going to run away from. Any other approach you are taking, we're not going to run away from that process. Okay. Both these institutions, both SAPO and Sassa are going to remain here with us. We're going to put the pressure we're putting in. If there's irritation amongst ourselves, it will happen. But at the end of the day, both Sassa and SAPO are going to remain with us. Okay. And we're going to continue putting the pressure. And my last point, Chairperson, is to continuously emphasizing, Mama, why we say the IMC? Because both ministers are not telling us the things we want to hear. And both of their departments are at loggerhead. And then, I mean, since we have started this meeting, we have not heard anything different, you see, from what we know. And it will be very difficult because we don't appoint ministers. The only person who appoints ministers is the President. And it's in our interest to say that, Mr. President, as Parliament, we will give our report back to the Speaker. Definitely so. We'll give it to Frolic, the Chair of Chairs. We'll definitely submit a report of our dissatisfaction to the President who has the IMC. Not because there's any other thing, but because we want to show that we can't be repeating ourselves year in, year out. Even the courts are putting us under pressure, and we are not able to find solution. So it's in that context that we are raising these particular matters. This is what I'm saying, honorable members. This is how we want to see if ever we can't resolve the matters in this particular way. Parliament will play its role. We will engage. We'll ask for all solutions, anything that you find constitutional to be able to deal with this particular matter.
All right.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, thanks very much. Honorable Dudley, I was already saying to myself, God forbid you don't talk today, but you raised your hand.
I've been mostly well covered by my colleagues here today, and importantly, there's a strong view that for the POSB or POSA to step up to the plate will be in the best interests of South Africa. So for me, what hasn't come out clearly today is that there are 3 ministries represented here. I would want to hear from each of those ministries, what is it going to take to break the deadlock? Because clearly that's what we want. We want the deadlock broken. We want to move forward in that direction. So thank you. That's all I'll have to say.
Amen to that. Comrade Kuno?
Thanks, Chairperson.
Right, after Comrade Kuno, we must come back this side. I know that.
Yes, and get responses. Thanks, Chairperson. One of my colleagues has said that we are not the BAC and that, but I think it should be clear, Chairperson, that we are the defenders of the public purse, and we should not be apologetic about that. And our approach as SCOPA has always been that we want to help each other to make sure that things are done correctly so that we can improve from a situation to another situation. I'm reading a report in front of me, Chairperson, because even last week I talked about the history problems that Sassa has had in terms of paying of grants, or grants. Since 2012, the CPS was awarded a 5-year tender, a 10 million tender, which all pay took them to court, and they said it was unlawful. I want to say to the DG of Treasury, from the beginning, they were supposed to have been involved. The Chief Procurement Officer from Treasury was supposed to be part of this process, and I think if they were part of, of the key players, we wouldn't be where we are today. And it's about time that the new Brown, I always forget the name because we've never met the new Brown, the new procurement officer.
Yes, Mr. Matebula.
Okay, Mr. Matebula. Welcome. Oh, welcome. Okay, welcome.
You look like Mdluli there, man.
Yeah, man, I thought you were in Mdluli as well.
Okay,
welcome,
okay,
Dr. Matebula.
okay.
Dr. Matebula, this is a process that we should have taken from day one when we started. This is a problem of a tender that has been awarded unlawfully. Treasury regulations are quite clear, and there's no one who's above law. And as Parliament, we cannot legislate and make sure, and after that, help somebody else to undo the good work that we are trying to achieve. Minister Batabile, you have been, I want to tell you, from the bottom of my heart that you have been ill-advised by your, your officials. Day in, day out, Chairperson, if we can start by saying maybe the PMG, they should give you all the notes of all the meetings that we've had with them. It's contradictions from contradictions. It's not going to help us at all. But what we are trying to say today, for us to solve a problem, we have to come up with with solutions. Right. For instance, let's talk about CSIR, Chairperson. We did not appoint CSIR, but Sassa did, and they paid them money for them to write a report for them. But after doing that, they did not even honor the report that they were given by them. So, Chairperson, I'm still reiterating to the fact that, and adding to what Comrade Nyami has said earlier on, that we need to meet with the President as soon as possible to try and get into the bottom of this. Tomorrow is the 1st of November. It's not even 5 months that we are left with. It's 2 months if we want to be practical with the real issues. It's 2 months that we are left with to be able to make sure that the 1st of April happens. Okay. And as we can see, it has never happened. For Sassa to write a proposal or do something, they come up with deadlines that they never even meet. The CEO last week said that now I'm talking to the CEO of Post Office, that the Post Office presentation was good, but when it came to filling of forms or writing what the tender bulletin wanted, they did not give the full information that they were giving. So I'm just saying that it's a word against this one. We've been to SAPO, and we knew, and most of the questions that we're asking based on the information that we're already given by SAPO to Sassa. So I'm saying, Chairperson, when you conclude the meeting later on, we really need to come up with a clear position of what do we do. Okay. Because we are all under pressure. It's a situation of South Africa, and South Africa should stand, and we are here being the mouthpiece to the mouthless. Thanks, okay. Chair.
All right. No, that's fine. I think the issues have been fully ventilated. Yes. I would imagine that from Sassa side, from SAPO, from National Treasury, Matebula, I don't know, Matebula wale Johnny or Dondorofane Ganen. Right. We'll be interested to find out from your side. How do you, and tomorrow we're with you on deviations and expansions. So this is one deviation you gave. How does it work? What is your role? What happens? And all that kind of stuff. So I would want to go to just a minute.
May the minister and the team, when they respond on specific matters, that if there's going to be an issued tender, say tomorrow, what if there will be bad losers and they take us to court? And then if that happens, I'm not going to anticipate what SAPO is going to do because SAPO is here. If they were not, I could have said something else. But because they are here, is to say, SAPO, I don't want to say they agree or they don't. What if also they don't agree? And then the tender process, because there is a matter, Honorable Minister and the CEO, that these adverts did not go out because SAPO was still being engaged. Now we have a situation that tomorrow, I'm exaggerating, you will issue tenders. Then there will be the whole process of procurement. And then results come out, people dispute, we go to court. What is there for us to go out of this house of fora to go and say, indeed, there are two prongs to say, if we still process, there will be a way of paying our people, not deviating from the court pronouncement. So I would want, when you make so that that question doesn't come later, when you make all responses, we will then know that we will be going out here knowing we will pay, even if there's a court case, even if we will pay. I just want that assurance.
All right, we'll start from the Department of Social Development and then to the Post Office and then National Treasury. I want us to really wrap this matter, and then we'll probably tie down, lift out a few suggestions that have been made, agree on them, and move forward. Comrade Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, members of Parliament. I hope we haven't come here to continue with Black Monday. Chairperson, the CSIR is a state institution like the Post Office.
I hear you on Black Monday, but you are wearing
Chair,
black.
Point of order. What is the minister referring to?
No.
Chair, what is the minister referring to?
No. We don't.
Is it more of that unparliamentary sarcasm?
No.
Yeah.
No. Continue, Comrade Minister. I was just observing that you are wearing black, but continue.
and then I need to be assisted to find where 93% is from the report of the CSIR, because there is a summary that is very clear. It's in your report. Read your report. And then also negotiations. You are told not to involve yourself in matters of officials, but at the same time, you are asked to attend negotiation meetings. The only thing I did was to sign a letter of concurrence. And then thereafter, the officials knew their marching order. And what they are supposed to do is to report back. Then we take the process forward. But also, it's not true that the officials are misdirecting us. I really want to disagree with that. What happened here was that, one, everyone has been talking as if they are the only ones who want the post office here. And we've been stating categorically that the post office is a state institution. We are prepared to work with them. But there is an assumption based on discussions, not empirical evidence that says give everything to the post office. The reason we started with giving the RFP to the post office is because the post office is a state institution. They were given priority. And therefore, what is being said here has no basis. Now, we then write letters to say, will you please expand on this? We do have those letters. We also receive a communication saying, we all understand what a workshop is. Workshop, you may do or implement decisions you take there, or you may not implement those decisions. And you may say you do have what it takes to do something or not. And the whole IMC agreed that there must be due diligence. And I'm not going to talk about things that are being said in the IMC. But if my colleagues are honest, I did raise that they need to have someone who is strategic, who is going to re-look into their response and upscale it if they can do that. And that never happened. Again, that says we don't want to work with the post office. But also, this is not our personal firm or a home or a family company. Going to the workshop, coming back, and say you are moving forward, I'm not sure if that's enough to test the capacity of the post office. I think the officials will give the report on the meeting between SAPO and the post office. But what I know is that the acting CEO, after communicating with the Treasury, responded to the letter from the post office. And Chairperson, we have agreed that on the 3rd of November, we are moving on with the processes of procurement. And then we would like the post office to again enter into this process rather than stopping the work they are doing. But also we would like them to also give a consolidated reports, because we can't get separate or different reports. But also, I don't want to come here and talk about letters that came from Sassa, because also they know what happened when it comes to concurrence And it's also not correct for us to want a government, departments or institutions to follow proper procedures for some of the things, and when it suits us, we support those that do not follow proper processes. Now, I heard one member talking about the staff members giving wrong information on who chairs the committee. I would really like to know who did that, because they all attend the IMC. Even the post office attends. Even Treasury attends. Home Affairs attends. Transport, communications, labor, health, science and technology. So it's a team. It's not just us only in that committee. There is a technical committee that is led by the DG in the presidency. Whether CPS has a license, I don't know. But what I know is that when they were dealing with their bid at the beginning, they presented a letter coming from Nedbank, and ABSA also presented a bank that was going to support them. And here, the post office knows Standard Bank supports them. But I don't know why is that not written in the request, in the response on the request for proposal, because they know that Standard Bank supports them. And then on the issue of external companies, we are very clear about that. Then issue of 50 million and 6.4 billion. Actually, I said plus 5 billion. And it was after the officials that deal with strategy looked into the whole process of transforming Sassa. What we are talking about now is the payment system. And at least we know that for now we are paying 16 Rand 45, and that the post office wants 21 Rand or 21 Rand 20, something like that. At least that we know. And one other thing that I think is putting all of us on the back foot, it's when committees, all of them, those that are in Parliament and those that are out of Parliament, ask for a request for proposal before even the response from the people that are supposed to respond. And it is when members of Parliament want to know who is in the procurement team. That is also disarming, because it's like people want to go out and lobby some people. The officials of Sassa were shocked last week to hear that a letter that was written to the CEO was with some of the members of Parliament. And one of the members of Parliament went out and came back to say, I have spoken to so and so. If Parliament is a lobbying place, let us all do so. Let us all be allowed to lobby members of Parliament. I don't want to talk like this, but I think there is something that is moving towards the direction that is going to finish this whole thing.
Okay.
Right now, we are saying there is a deadlock. We have written to the CEO of the post office, and we are moving forward with the processes. And we want all members of parliament to understand that this is not only the people that are going to challenge us. Like last time, there are others that are going to challenge us continuously. And what we need from Parliament is to be given earnest advice, not people rushing to have inquiries as if we are not doing our work. We are doing our work. Now, Chairperson, I also agree with you that the Treasury should form part of our meetings, so that they also give guidance on some of the issues that we might think are getting out of hand. Because we did ask them, now is the procurement dealt with in the portfolio committee? And are all departments going to come to portfolio committees and talk about procurement? Are we not setting a precedence? And we all know that the work we are doing is very important. It is about our people. And we have committed to come and give a report. We have never thought about that. We've committed and subjected ourselves actually to following parliament processes. Don't say shame because
No. Comrade,
please.
Comrade Minister,
Please,
no, please, hang on. If it's not said through me, don't respond to it.
So but also, it's not like we have a bad relationship with SAPO. We are trying to work together. And surely if you work together, you don't agree on anything. Members of parliament sitting here don't agree on everything. So we must also be given an opportunity to iron out areas where there is disagreement. But moving forward with the process, we are moving forward. Helen.
Before Comrade Minister, I just want you to maybe to clarify a little deeper. You said we are going ahead, SAPO must give a consolidated report. I just want you to maybe go a little deeper into that. How do you see the process of engaging?
Can I make a plea, honestly, that members of this portfolio committee allow the chair to chair and the presenter to present. Please, Honorable Hope. Thank you.
Comrade Minister, just to, before the acting CEO, just to expand from your side, going forward, what do you envisage in terms of your engagement with the post office to try and find each other?
I think that a question should be asked from the post office, because we have been asking for a meeting with them, and we have not discussed issues that we had put forward that we expect should be done by the post office. They must not say what they are going to do just because they're going to bully us and say, no, that can be given to other people, not us. We can do this. When they did not respond to the questions here.
Okay. All right. Okay. Acting CEO of Sassa.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, maybe before I come to the final part that we had with Post Office, I'd like to just to take us back on the procurement process that has unfolded. And because it looks like we're forgetting that there is part that has been given to Post Office. Thank you.
No. I think we. Isn't it, ma'am, last week you indicated that there's a part that you have offered the Post Office, and the expectation was that you were going, they were supposed to come back to you on Thursday, and you were going to meet to iron out things or whatever. So our expectation was that today you will say, yes, we have signed with the Post Office, the other processes are going this way. And the report we're getting is that you have not yet signed with the Post Office. So that's where we are. And that's why in the last part, I was asking the Minister, how then do we move from here, seeing that Thursday has come, it has passed, it is Tuesday today, and there's been no agreement signed with the Post Office?
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe just to...
Just a minute, CEO, Acting CEO. We must bear in mind that your responses come after the presentation by SAPO. So clearly, from what SAPO is presenting, you are still too far apart. And then we are all in this panic situation because we can see that even if we would allow you to go out now, you wouldn't agree because already there's a disagreement in what we have already presented. And I think that's where the deadlock comes on. Because we all here paralyzed because we depend on the Post Office and Sassa having a clear time frame and way forward. Otherwise, now is that SAPO says they are dissatisfied. They raise issues. And secondly, you say you wrote to them and so on. So I don't know whether we are going to continue finding these matters between Sassa and SAPO. Because obviously, in their presentation, it was very clear they are poles too far apart. And we need to specifically address that before we can move. Because if they are not going to move, we can say every wisdom, but they themselves are clear in their presentation, clear that they didn't come together, that others say the information was scanty, it did not come up, but that there was no follow-up of saying, include this and this. And the Post Office as well. Now I think each one is closing the hand, and they will close their windows. And if we sit here and await, let's find out how CEO is going to get through the impasse. Both CEOs must tell us, how do you deal with this impasse? Or maybe there's no impasse. I think there is.
Yeah. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, maybe just to recap a bit, Post Office was given systems integrator as well as the biometric and the life certification to actually do that work for Sassa, which is one out of the 4 areas that we had. So we've given the letter, and when we gave the letter to Post Office, we gave them 3 days to respond, and then they requested that we give an extension until Thursday last week, of which we did. Subsequent to that, we received a letter from the CEO of Post Office stating that they would only be able to do what has been offered to them if we include the banking part of the 4 areas that we had as Sassa. So it stated that that would give efficiencies and all of that. So instead of actually answering to the letter at the same time, we requested that we have a meeting. The meeting was to explain that because of the procurement process that has unfolded, I am, as an accounting officer, I cannot be able to change what the evaluation process has actually given.
and then the BAC has actually awarded them. And we wanted then to find space so that we can work from what has been given so that we can grow efficiencies around it. In fact, it was still to negotiate in good faith to say we are unable then to move beyond the procurement process or to actually negate what the process has said. That was the reason for the meeting, to say we have seen some other areas over and above what you are going to do. We were going to use you as a merchant, as they were saying that they have already been paying grants, of which we wanted them to go into the space again. We still want them to go to the space of paying grants. And we also explained that we would be able then to use their old and dilapidated buildings, to be able to use them as pay points if they are in the kilometer radius that we were supposed to actually do. Okay. But the response was that no, they're sticking to what they want from this letter.
Okay.
They were not going to take whatever else we were going to offer them, you know, to grow around what has been offered to them. Right. And then for that, then I had then to put what I was going to say in writing, to say, unfortunately, I cannot change the procurement processes. And that is where we are with the post office.
No,
yes.
That's fine. Post office, why didn't you go to the meeting that was supposed to be?
But there's something that I wanted to mention, Chair, because I've stated last week as well that I did speak to the CEO of Post Office, and even now, if you check your document on page 38 about the cards, it's saying that they can produce about 10,000 a day, which is the amount that is giving us 2.4 million. And we must be mindful that the people
which document?
No, his document, he's got
his
it.
document?
Yes.
This
And I want to drive
You're referring to this one?
No, we don't have that one. We have not been given that one.
Which one do you have?
The actual, the bid document. The actual bid documents.
Oh.
So just to stress that whatever has been given, it's what has been in the bid document.
All right.
The evaluation process with the presentations, because the presentation is something else, but the evaluation process and the people that are evaluating will only be able to evaluate what is in the bid document.
The bid documents.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. No, that's fine. Want to give the post office, why didn't you go to the meeting on Wednesday, so that instead of writing each other letters, you sit down and talk? And yeah.
I don't think it's fair, Chairperson. You have given Sassa a chance to respond to questions. You have to give, we've asked a lot of questions as well to the post office. Give them a chance as well to take us through all the questions. I mean, they should not be treated here as some people who are secondary here. They're as important because we've called both of them. So let's give them a chance to respond to all the questions. Don't just topple one question and say, ask that question. Let them respond to all the questions.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
I was merely highlighting a point that I think, as they respond, they must not leave out. And I would like you to talk to this issue about the letter from Magwaza, because the Sassa Act says they need the concurrence of the minister. In its absence, does it make it legal, a legal engagement or what? But respond to all the issues that have been raised.
If I may just start first, then I'll give it to the CEO and the phone. I think my understanding, there's been meetings with Sassa after their first award letter. The purpose of those meetings was to clarify and some of the issues they've raised, so that we find a solution so that we can resolve those issues. That was the purpose of those meetings. But the CEO will put the details when they wrote to them, when they met, and so on. The first thing in this, that's why I say I'm not sure whether it's a procurement process or is it an intergovernmental process. My understanding, if you ask to go to intergovernmental process, you start with the PFMA, then you are granted. That's what Treasury then granted. our understanding is that we have been involved in intergovernmental process in terms of Act 13 of 2005. And that act has got its own deadlock breaking mechanisms, which have not been followed. It's got its own, the Intergovernmental Relations Framework Act of 2005. Because both the previous CEO and the current CEO, they base this relation on this act. So I think that's important that, yes, to come to that act, you start with the PFMA, you get the deviation approval, which has been granted, then you operate in terms of that act. So I think that is important in this deadlock breaking mechanism to also take that into account, because we must act legally. And this has been called a collaboration arrangement or agreement. It has never been called a procurement agreement, or it has been a collaboration so that we can assist the SAP. As we said, the purpose really was not to say we reject this, we do this, was to come with a solution. And we're honestly hoping that the officials will find that solution after the engaging. So I thought that we should do that. The CEO will respond to this thing of the amount. If you listen carefully in the presentation earlier, he said the amount is not a do or die issue. But you must also factor a lot of other things, which, because we are not comparing 16 rand and 10 rand, it's not apples and apples, it's totally different things altogether, as is put in an earlier presentation. But our approach is that we still believe that we can still resolve this matter before the inquiries, but it's up to Parliament if they follow the inquiry. It can still be resolved if we follow the legal prescripts to resolve these issues, because the legislators, when they set up these laws, they put them and with their own deadlock breaking mechanism. So that's what we'll urge. And I think as government as a whole, there's a lot which has been said here that maybe the ministers are not committed to make sure that we comply with the directive of the court and make sure that there's continuity of payment. That's not my sense of even the IMC. The IMC doesn't meet every day. It meets so that it can consider where there are challenges and also where they need to intervene and guide the process. The last meeting, if I remember, Minister Lamini, it was in September when we were dealing with a report to the Constitutional Court. And clearly we were satisfied at that time with the timeframes and processes which were set up, and we reported those processes to the court, and they are of public. And I'm sure then if the problems arise, I'm sure the committee will be able to meet and deal with some of those challenges instead of. But I didn't have a sense that we are trying to sabotage the South Africans who are so much dependent on this from any of the members of the IMC. I think I should end there, then get the CEO and the accounting authority to deal with specific issues which members have asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson and honourable members. I need to state up front that I really wish we could just sit down and find a solution. And I'm open to that discussion. I had a very productive meeting with the acting CEO after our first meeting. And I think they also have expressed a desire to find a solution. I mean, just to put that on the table. Just to get the sequence of events correct, we got a response on the evening of the 18th of October. giving us until the evening of Saturday, the 21st of October, to respond. So I asked for an extension, being the fact that it was in the middle of a weekend, for us to consider. In the end, I didn't need that extension, and I responded in full on the 20th, well within the 6-day extension, which they did extend me. And subsequent to the meeting that we had with them the very next morning, I think it was on the 19th, it's my sister's birthday. And we sat at that meeting, trying to better understand what we'd said to each other. I'm just going to speak straightforwardly here. I think that some of the disconnect between us is not based on ill will. It's based on understanding and processes of evaluation and a deep understanding of how the banking system works and what it means if you've got this card, can it do that and not do that, and can a bank do this and can a bank not do that? I don't think there was malice in that misunderstanding. I think there was genuine misunderstanding, and even the CSIR said that the report, and about 60% of the report was not, of the request for the due diligence was not well founded. If you go through the report, you will find many categories on which they don't express a view, because they don't believe that they understand the essence of the debate. So there's been a lot of misunderstanding. And if indeed we did sit together, we could teach one another and find common ground on what a bank card can do, what it means to be a part of the payment system, what interoperable capacity means, and because I would argue that most people in this room are not familiar with all of those terms, But we are, as a bank. We have to be, okay? And so I think that a lot of this stuff is due to an inability to evaluate our capacity, because of an absence of deep understanding of what it is that the Post Bank currently can deliver. So I just say that as an invitation, to us sitting down and saying, can you really do this? Show us how it works, and we'll show you, And I know there have been processes, and I obviously support the Minister in saying that we regarded this as an intergovernmental framework interaction, not necessarily something driven by the strict and process rules that open tenders adhere to. We were discussing with one another. Minister, you asked about where the 97% comes from. There were 5 categories in that the score was done on the CSIR report, and you either could perform, could partially perform, not perform, perform well, or whatever. I counted up the not performs, and I got to 8 out of 218. Which by definition means the others you can perform. So by logical deduction, you get to 90-something%. Okay, statistics. But the fact of the matter is that there were any number of processes of discovery. Okay, there was the process of the RFP, which we've got fully fledged responses to, and it was a well-considered document in my view. There was the process of engagement, where we talked to one another in limited meetings, it must be said. But the acting CEO and I did have a one-to-one discussion after the initial meeting we had, after their response. And I reiterate, I really believe that both sides wanted to find a better way and better answer than the one that was on the table. But I'm speculating. That's my view. We then subsequently we had a subsequent meeting where they said, well, why don't you just not accept our offer and we can start a negotiation again or something. We were wary of that, in the sense that we wanted to protect what we believe still stands in law, which is the letter of appointment under the collaboration discussion that we've had. Okay. Answering some of the specific questions, I've been in the banking industry since 1984. You're trying to discover my age or my ability? The numbers that we tabled, the 650 million, are the numbers. Those are the factual numbers which we can have independently determined. I've highlighted the point that maybe the CSIR mandate and the depth of understanding of the CSIR as well, and I don't say this without due respect, it doesn't get to the core of what is required to be delivered. There's still quite a big gap of understanding by the general public about what the constituent parts of this mysterious social grants payment system is. It's a simple system. It just requires a lot of volume and a lot of big systems, and those we can build easily amongst us. You asked, I'm not sure it's to the subject, but I'll answer it very quickly. We got the 3.7 billion allocation. It was, at this stage, we understand it to be expressly for the settlement of bank debt. And we understand, although we haven't had this confirmed, that that was something that the banking industry were having a discussion with National Treasury with. We have engaged with them, and we are engaging with the banks in the next week, because we support entirely the view that actually we're looking for investment capital, not settlement of debt capital. And we also believe that the strength of the balance sheet will now start justifying us to be able to raise capital off our own balance sheet and issuing things like SAPA bonds and so on. We're definitely a going concern. Let there be no mistake. Even prior to the 3.7 billion capital injection, we had a net asset value of 940 odd million, and so we are solvent, completely solvent. We have a liquidity challenge, but that's not the same as solvency. As far as the banking license is concerned, and when that was the stage of development, we submitted our Section 16 reply on the 26th of June. There are two components that are required to be answered, and we've also recently approved the subsequent questions which came out of the Reserve Bank to be resubmitted to them. There's another section, Section 43, which deals with the bank controlling company structure, and there are matters of aligning two acts which are a matter for Cabinet to consider, the Banks Act and the Companies Act, and there's a matter of which capital construct is one that the Reserve Bank would be happy to deal with, given that the natural holding company of the bank would be SAPA, and you're aware of its state of financial distress previously. So there were just alternative structures which National Treasury and ourselves through DTPS have to agree and submit to the SARB for their approval. So these are capital construct and legal issues, but in substance all of the other matters have been dealt with. I want to refer to the report of the panel, because the report that you're referring to is very out of date. It was signed on the 12th of September, and it relates to meetings and discussions that were had before they ever met SAPA. We met with the panel of experts of the Constitutional Court on the 17th of October, and we gave them a fully fledged presentation, and that report has not yet been produced, and so that would have up-to-date information on our response. The previous report has got no input from us, and we're also meeting with them tomorrow. We've been called again to the panel of experts, and we will present again, and we have given them all the information which you've seen presented here so that they can take it further. I think that